I stood in the living room of the country house my husband and I built 30 years ago, watching my son Derek shout words I never imagined hearing. "The house doesn't belong to you anymore. Forget about coming here." His wife Amanda stood beside him, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her face. Through the window, I could see the garden where Thomas and I planted roses the summer Derek turned 12. My hands should have been shaking. My heart should have been breaking. But instead, I felt strangely calm. I just smiled and said, "Okay." Derek's face flickered with confusion, like he'd expected tears or arguments. I walked toward the door, and something in my steady steps must have unnerved him, because I heard Amanda whisper urgently in his ear as I left. My fingers gripped the steering wheel as I drove down the gravel driveway for what Derek assumed was the last time. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing on the porch Thomas built with his own hands, Amanda gesturing animatedly while Derek nodded. The morning sun glinted off the windows of the farmhouse, and memories flooded through me with each mile I put between myself and that property. Thomas died 3 years ago of a massive heart attack while working in his shop. One moment he was sanding a cabinet he'd promised to finish for our neighbor, and the next he was gone. The doctors said he never felt pain, that it was instant, but I felt pain enough for both of us in the months that followed. We'd bought those 5 acres when Derek was just 10 years old, both of us working double shifts to afford the down payment. Thomas worked construction during the day and took side jobs on weekends. I waitressed at 2 different diners, my feet aching so badly some nights I'd soak them in ice water before collapsing into bed. We built that house board by board, nail by nail. Thomas insisted on doing most of the work himself, said it meant more that way. Derek would hand him tools, and Thomas would explain what each one did, teaching our son the value of craftsmanship. Back then, Derek listened. Back then, he cared about something besides money. After Thomas passed, Derek seemed supportive at first. He'd call every few days, stop by my apartment in town with groceries, ask if I needed anything fixed. I'd moved to the small apartment because the silence in that big country house felt suffocating without Thomas. But I kept the property, spent weekends there tending the garden, maintaining what we'd built together. It was my sanctuary, my connection to the man I'd loved for 42 years. Then, Derek met Amanda 2 years ago. The courtship was whirlwind fast, 6 months from first date to wedding. She was pretty in a sharp-edged way, always dressed impeccably, always calculating behind her smile. At family dinners, she'd make comments about how I didn't need such a big house, how it was wasted on one person, how the property value had increased so much. I should have seen the warning signs. 6 months ago, Derek came to my apartment with papers. Estate planning, he called it, documents to make sure everything was organized in case something happened to me. He was my son, my only child. I trusted him completely. So I signed where he told me to sign, barely glancing at the legal language that swam before my tired eyes. My blood pressure medication made me foggy sometimes, and I figured Derek wouldn't steer me wrong. Turns out I'd signed a quitclaim deed transferring the house entirely to him. He waited 6 months, letting me believe nothing had changed. Then today, he and Amanda showed up at the country house while I was watering the roses and informed me I no longer had any right to be there. I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex, a modest 2-bedroom unit that cost me $900 a month. As I climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor, my phone rang. Derek's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mom." His voice had changed completely from the confident, cold tone of an hour ago. Now he sounded panicked. "Mom, there's something wrong with the septic system. It's backing up everywhere. There's sewage in the basement." I could hear Amanda screaming in the background, her shrill voice carrying through the phone. "This is disgusting. We can't stay here. Oh my God, it's everywhere." I sat down on my worn couch, the one Thomas and I had bought at a yard sale 25 years ago, and allowed myself a small smile. "How much does it cost to fix a septic system?" Derek asked, his voice tight with worry. "Oh," I said calmly. "About $15,000 to $20,000 for a full replacement. The system is 30 years old, Derek. It's been showing signs of failure for about 6 months now. I was planning to deal with it this summer." The silence on the other end was profound. "What? You knew about this?" "I had an inspection done last fall," I told him. The report said we had maybe a year before it needed replacing. I've been saving money from my Social Security to handle it. But the house is yours now, Derek. Not my problem anymore. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were trembling now, not from fear but from a complicated mixture of satisfaction and sadness. I'd known about the septic tank. I'd also known about several other issues with the house. Things that happen when a building reaches 3 decades old. Things that Derek and Amanda were about to discover. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Martha. She'd heard about what happened through the small-town grapevine that spread news faster than wildfire. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" "I'm fine," I typed back. Better than fine, actually. But I wasn't fine. Not really. My son had betrayed me, chosen greed over love, and there was a hollow ache in my chest where my heart used to be. Still, I'd prepared for this possibility. After Thomas died, I'd learned to think ahead, to protect myself. The septic system was just the beginning of what Derek and Amanda didn't know about their new property. 2 days passed before I heard from Derek again. I spent the time organizing my apartment, reviewing my finances, and meeting with my lawyer, Patricia. When Derek finally called, his voice had lost all its previous confidence. "Mom, we need to talk about the septic system. I got 3 quotes. The cheapest is $18,000. He paused, clearly expecting me to offer help. When I said nothing, he continued. "Amanda thinks you should pay for it since you knew about the problem and didn't disclose it." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Derek, I didn't sell you the house. You tricked me into signing it over. There was no disclosure requirement. And even if there was, houses that old come with problems. That's why people do inspections before buying property. You wanted the house so badly you didn't bother checking what you were getting." Amanda's voice came through the background, angry and insistent. Derek covered the phone, but I could hear muffled arguing. When he came back on, his tone had hardened. "We could sue you for fraud." "You could try," I said evenly. "But I'm an elderly widow on a fixed income, and you're a successful businessman who pressured his mother into signing away her property. How do you think that'll look to a judge?" I hung up again. My hands were steadier this time. The next crisis hit Derek and Amanda faster than I'd anticipated. 4 days after taking possession of the house, Derek called me from the county tax assessor's office. His voice was barely controlled rage. "There's $12,000 in back property taxes. The last quarterly payment wasn't made. They're adding penalties every day. As the new owner, I'm responsible for this." I was making tea in my small kitchen, and I continued pouring hot water over the tea bag as I responded. "Yes, the last payment was due the week before you had me sign the deed. I decided not to pay it. That's your responsibility now, as the property owner." "You did this on purpose. You're trying to sabotage us." "No, Derek," I said quietly. "I'm just not protecting you from the consequences of your choices anymore. You're 35 years old. You wanted to be a property owner. Welcome to property ownership." When Amanda found out about the tax bill, their argument was loud enough that I heard about it from Martha, whose cousin lived 3 houses down from the country property. Apparently, Amanda had plans to flip the house immediately, list it for $400,000, and split the profit. She'd seen it as easy money, a way to solve some problem she'd been hiding from Derek. But you can't sell a house with a failed septic system and a tax lien, and the problems were just beginning. The bank sent an appraiser when Derek tried to get a home equity loan to cover the repairs. The appraiser spent 3 hours at the property and delivered devastating news. The roof needed complete replacement, estimated cost $12,000. There were foundation cracks on the north side that could require $30,000 to repair. The electrical system was outdated and not up to current code, another $8,000. The list went on and on. Total estimated repairs, $68,000. Current value of the house in perfect condition, maybe $350,000. Current value as is, $200,000, if they were lucky. Derek showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Tuesday evening. I opened the door to find him looking like he'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. His eyes were hollow, his shirt wrinkled, his usual confident posture collapsed into defeat. "Mom, can we talk, please?" I let him in, though every instinct told me to slam the door. He sat on the edge of my couch, head in his hands. We need help. The house needs so much work. We don't have that kind of money. Amanda is talking about divorce. She says I ruined everything by listening to you." I sat across from him in Thomas's old recliner, the leather cracked and faded. "Derek, I didn't ruin anything. You made a choice. You decided you deserved your father's house more than I did. You manipulated me into signing papers I didn't understand. Now you're learning that the house your father and I built wasn't just a pile of money waiting to be cashed in. It was years of work, maintenance, care, and love. But you knew about all the problems," he said, looking up at me with something like accusation in his eyes. "I did. That's why I was living here, saving money to fix them properly. Your father and I always knew that house would need major work eventually. We were prepared for it. You weren't. Can't you at least lend us some money?" He was begging now, and it broke something inside me to see it. "Derek, I'm living on Social Security and a small pension from the diner where I worked for 30 years. After paying rent, utilities, and medication, I have maybe $300 left each month. I was saving $50 a month toward the septic system. That's how I was planning to pay for it. Over time. With patience. I don't have $68,000 to lend you." He left without another word, shoulders slumped in defeat. Through my window, I watched him sit in his car for 10 minutes before driving away. Amanda called me that night, screaming obscenities until I quietly disconnected the call and blocked her number. Martha came over the next day with groceries and concern written all over her face. "Are you sure you're doing the right thing?" She's known me for 15 years, since we met at a church potluck, and she'd never been one to sugarcoat things. "I don't know," I admitted. "But Thomas put protections in place before he died. There are things about that property Derek doesn't understand yet." "What kind of things?" I smiled sadly. "The kind that might save everyone if Derek can learn what he needs to learn in time." The lawsuit papers arrived by certified mail 1 week later. Amanda had hired a lawyer using what I later learned was their last remaining savings. She was suing me for fraud and something called elder abuse, claiming I'd deliberately hidden defects in the property to trick them into accepting a worthless asset. The lawsuit demanded the transfer be voided and sought $50,000 in damages for their emotional distress and financial losses. The local newspaper picked up the story. Local woman sued by son over property transfer. The article painted me as either a confused elderly woman or a manipulative con artist, depending on which paragraph you read. By the time the story circulated through town, I'd become a pariah at my own church. People I'd known for 30 years crossed the street to avoid me. My book club uninvited me from our monthly meetings. Even the cashier at my grocery store gave me cold looks as she scanned my items. The whispers followed me everywhere. "Did you hear about Brittany Thompson? Her own son had to sue her. Can you imagine?" I had to hire a lawyer to defend myself, which meant draining the small savings account I'd built up over 3 years. Patricia was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in family law. She reviewed my case with the careful attention of someone who'd seen every variation of family dysfunction imaginable. "This is bad," she told me bluntly in her office. "Amanda's lawyer is going to paint you as either incompetent or vindictive. They'll argue you deliberately sabotaged them. Do you have any evidence that Derek pressured you into signing?" "I have emails," I said. He sent me several messages beforehand about how the property was wasted on me, how I should think about the family's future. I didn't think anything of it at the time. "That helps. What else?" I took a deep breath. Thomas put the house in a trust before he died, an irrevocable trust. I was the trustee, but there were conditions on transferring ownership to Derek. Patricia's eyes sharpened. "What kind of conditions?" "The property couldn't be transferred to Derek until he turned 40. Thomas was worried about Derek's judgment, wanted him to mature first. Derek is 35. The transfer might be legally void." She sat back in her chair, processing this. "Do you have the trust documents?" "That's where we hit our problem. Thomas kept them in a safe deposit box at First National Bank. After he died, Derek had himself added to the box as my co-signer. He said it was for safety, in case something happened to me. 6 months ago, he went through that box and took most of the documents, including the trust papers. He has the originals." Patricia's expression darkened. "So you have copies, but they have the originals that would prove your case?" "Exactly. They could claim the trust never existed, that your copies are fabricated. She drummed her fingers on her desk. This is going to be ugly. The court hearing was scheduled for 3 months out. In the meantime, Amanda's lawyer filed motion after motion, each one requiring Patricia's time and my dwindling money to respond to. My legal fees climbed past $10,000, then $20,000. I had to take out a loan against my apartment, putting my home at risk to defend myself against my own son. My health started deteriorating under the stress. My blood pressure spiked despite medication. I had trouble sleeping, lying awake at 3 a.m, replaying every moment of Derek's childhood, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. The doctor warned me that the stress could trigger a stroke if I didn't find a way to calm down. But how do you calm down when your son testifies in a court filing that you're a confused old woman who doesn't remember reality correctly? How do you breathe normally when the newspaper quotes your daughter-in-law saying you're a toxic, manipulative mother who's trying to destroy her marriage? Martha did some digging into Amanda's background and discovered information that explained a lot. Amanda had been married before, divorced after only 2 years. Her ex-husband, when Martha tracked him down, claimed Amanda had married him for his money and left when he had financial trouble. There was a pattern there, a template of manipulation that Derek had fallen into without seeing it. I shared this information with Patricia, who said it might help establish Amanda's character, but it wouldn't change the fundamental question: was the trust real, and was the transfer valid? The preliminary hearing arrived on a cold morning in March. I sat in the courtroom wearing my best dress, the navy blue one I'd worn to Thomas's funeral, and watched Derek take the stand. Amanda's lawyer questioned him gently, sympathetically. "Derek, did your father ever mention putting the house in a trust?" Derek, looking uncomfortable in a suit that fit him poorly, shook his head. "No. Dad talked about leaving everything to Mom, and then eventually to me, but he never mentioned any trust or age restrictions. Did your mother ever show you trust documents?" "Never. The first I heard of any trust was when she tried to use it to get out of the lawsuit. I think she's confused. Maybe she's thinking of Dad's will." He paused, and I saw genuine pain cross his face. "She's not been the same since Dad died. I think grief affected her memory." I sat there listening to my son diagnose me with cognitive decline, and something inside me went cold and hard. Patricia had warned me this was coming, but hearing it was different from expecting it. The judge, a tired-looking man in his 60s, listened with an expression that suggested he'd heard it all before. When it was Patricia's turn, she introduced my copies of the trust documents as evidence, but the judge was clearly skeptical without the originals. He didn't dismiss the case, which was good, but he didn't rule in my favor either. The message was clear. I was going to have to prove the trust existed, and without those original documents, that would be nearly impossible. The newspaper coverage was brutal. Son testifies mother may be confused about property ownership. The story spread through town like poison. Church members I'd known for decades stopped returning my calls. My former book club friends acted like I didn't exist. I stopped going to my weekly Bible study because the looks of pity and suspicion were too much to bear. The isolation was crushing. Martha remained loyal, bless her heart, but even she gently suggested I might want to consider settling with Derek and Amanda, paying them something to make this go away. But I didn't have anything to pay them with. My savings were gone, my apartment was mortgaged, and my monthly Social Security check barely covered basic expenses. I stopped taking one of my blood pressure medications to save money. $30 a month didn't seem like much, but it meant an extra carton of milk, a few more groceries. I told myself I'd be fine, that stress was the real problem, not missing one pill. I was wrong. I collapsed in my apartment on a Thursday afternoon. One moment I was washing dishes, thinking about the next court date, and the next moment the floor rushed up to meet me. Martha found me 3 hours later when I didn't answer her phone calls. She had a key to my place for emergencies, and thank God she used it. The hospital kept me overnight for observation. Dangerously high blood pressure, dehydration, and what the doctor called acute stress syndrome. He was a young man, probably in his 30s, and he looked at me with a mixture of professional concern and personal frustration. "Mrs. Thompson, you're killing yourself. Your body can't sustain this level of stress. If you don't find a way to reduce the pressure in your life, you're going to have a stroke. Maybe a fatal one." "I'm trying," I whispered. My voice sounded weak, old, defeated. Try harder. Whatever legal battle you're fighting, it's not worth your life. But it was my life. That house represented everything Thomas and I had built together. Every memory we'd made, every dream we'd shared, every sacrifice we'd endured. Letting Derek and Amanda take, it felt like letting them erase Thomas from existence. The hospital bill arrived a week later. $4,300 after insurance. I had no idea how I'd pay it. My credit cards were maxed out from legal fees. The loan against my apartment was due. I was drowning in debt with no way to surface. Derek visited me in the hospital, showing up after Amanda had gone to bed. He looked terrible, like he wasn't sleeping either. He sat in the chair beside my bed, hands clasped between his knees, unable to meet my eyes. "Mom, I'm so sorry. This has all gotten out of control. I never wanted it to go this far." I looked at him, this man who used to be my baby boy, and barely recognized him. "Then why don't you stop it?" "Amanda won't let me. She's convinced you sabotaged us on purpose. She wants you to pay for everything, the repairs, the taxes, all of it." He finally looked up at me, and I saw fear in his eyes. "She's pregnant, Mom. She's using the baby as leverage. Says if I don't get the money, she'll leave and I'll never see my child." My heart seized. A grandchild. Under any other circumstances, this would be cause for celebration. Now it was just another weapon. Derek continued, his words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "I can make this stop. I'll deed the house back to you. But you have to help us. Pay for the repairs, all $68,000, and give us $100,000 for our trouble. Then we'll drop the lawsuit, and everyone can move on." I stared at him, speechless. $168,000. He might as well have asked me for the moon. "I don't have that kind of money, Derek. You know I don't." "Then sell the house. It's worth more than that, even with the repairs needed. Sell it. Pay us. Keep the rest. And then I'd have nothing. No home, no property, no connection to your father. After everything, I'd end up with maybe $50,000 to my name. And where would I live on that?" He leaned forward, grabbing my hand. His grip was too tight, almost painful. "Please, Mom. Amanda will leave me if we don't get the money. She'll take my baby. I can't lose my child." I pulled my hand away. "Derek, if Amanda leaves you over money, she never loved you. She's been using you from the start. Can't you see that?" His face hardened. "You never liked her. You never gave her a chance." "I gave her every chance, but I'm not going to let you two blackmail me. The answer is no." He stood up abruptly, knocking the chair backwards. "Fine. Then we'll see you in court. And Mom, you're going to lose. The judge already thinks you're confused. We'll make sure everyone knows you're an unstable old woman who can't take care of herself." He left without looking back. I lay in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily, and cried for the first time since this nightmare began. Not just for myself, but for Derek. For the man he used to be before greed, and Amanda twisted him into someone I didn't recognize. Martha was furious when I told her about Derek's visit. She wanted to march over to their house and give them both a piece of her mind, but I stopped her. What good would it do? Derek had made his choice. Things got worse. Amanda filed a new lawsuit, this one claiming alienation of affection. She argued that I was deliberately trying to destroy her marriage by refusing to help them financially. It was legally nonsense, but it made headlines. Son's wife claims mother-in-law is destroying family. Then came the restraining order. Amanda convinced a judge that I was harassing them, calling at all hours, driving by their house. None of it was true. I'd barely left my apartment in weeks, too depressed and sick to do much of anything. But her lawyer presented it convincingly enough that the judge granted a temporary order. I couldn't contact Derek, couldn't go within 500 feet of him or Amanda, couldn't call or text or email. My own son, legally protected from me like I was some kind of dangerous criminal. The local newspaper ran the story with undisguised glee. By then, I'd become the town villain, the cautionary tale mothers whispered about. See what happens when you don't treat your children right. See how they turn on you? I stopped reading the paper, stopped watching local news, stopped answering my phone unless it was Martha or Patricia. I sat in my apartment, the walls closing in, and contemplated what Patricia had suggested in our last meeting: declare bankruptcy Walk away from everything, start over. At 67 years old, starting over meant what exactly? Living in a studio apartment on $900 a month Social Security? No savings, no property, no legacy to leave? Dying alone and forgotten, while Derek and Amanda laughed at how easily they'd won? Martha found me on my couch one evening, staring at the wall, a bottle of Thomas's old pain pills in my hand. I'd been thinking how easy it would be, how much simpler. She snatched the bottle away, flushed the contents, and sat with me until dawn, holding my hand and reminding me that giving up was exactly what Amanda wanted. You're stronger than this, Brittany. Thomas wouldn't want you to quit. Thomas isn't here, I said bitterly. Thomas left me to deal with this mess alone. He left you protections. Use them. What protections? I don't have the trust documents. I don't have money. I don't even have my health anymore. She was quiet for a moment, then pulled out her phone. Remember how Derek took everything from that safe deposit box? I nodded. Banks keep records. Digital logs of who accesses boxes and when. If Amanda accessed that box, there'll be a record. Why would Amanda access it? Derek was the one who took the documents. Are you sure? Martha's eyes glinted with something like hope. Maybe we should find out. Patricia filed an emergency motion with the court requesting access to the bank's safe deposit box records. Amanda's lawyer objected violently, claiming it was a fishing expedition, an invasion of privacy, harassment. But our judge, perhaps sensing something off in Amanda's aggressive defense, ordered the bank to preserve all records and scheduled a hearing. The bank manager, a nervous man named Harold, testified that, yes, they kept digital logs of all box accesses. Yes, Derek had accessed the box 6 months ago and removed several documents. But then Harold dropped information that changed everything. Amanda had also accessed the box 3 weeks ago, using Derek's key while he was at work. She'd been in the private viewing room with the box for 40 minutes. According to the log, she'd removed 2 items. But the log also showed something unusual. The box contents increased in weight when she left. She'd taken something out, but she'd also put something in. Amanda's lawyer tried to spin it. His client had every right to access the box as Derek's wife. She was looking for important financial documents. Nothing suspicious about it. But Patricia pressed. Did Derek know his wife accessed the box? We subpoenaed Derek to testify, and he looked like a man walking to his own execution. Under oath, Patricia asked him directly, "Did you ask Amanda to access your safe deposit box 3 weeks ago?" "No." His voice was barely a whisper. "Did you know she accessed it?" "Not until yesterday, when my lawyer told me." "What do you think she removed?" Derek's hands were shaking. "I don't know for certain, but I found something hidden in our house. In her closet, behind a false panel she thought I didn't know about." "What did you find?" The courtroom went completely silent. Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. The original trust documents. Everything my father set up. Amanda hid them. She was planning to destroy them before the trial. The courtroom exploded. Amanda's lawyer was on his feet, objecting. The judge was banging his gavel. Amanda herself was screaming at Derek, calling him a traitor, a mama's boy, every vile name imaginable. 2 bailiffs had to restrain her when she tried to lunge at Derek across the courtroom. The judge threatened to hold Amanda in contempt if she didn't control herself. Her lawyer tried to withdraw from the case on the spot. Derek sat in the witness chair, tears streaming down his face, looking at me with an expression of absolute devastation. "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything." The judge ordered a recess while he examined the trust documents. Patricia and I sat in the hallway, neither of us quite believing what had just happened. When court reconvened an hour later, the judge's expression was grim. "These documents appear authentic." He held up the papers Derek had produced, properly notarized, dated, legally executed. They clearly established that the property known as the Thompson Country Estate was placed in an irrevocable trust with specific conditions for transfer. He looked directly at Derek. "Mr. Thompson, were you aware of these conditions when you had your mother sign the quitclaim deed?" Derek's voice broke. "My father told me about the trust before he died. He said he was protecting the property until I was mature enough to handle it. I was angry about it back then. When Mom signed the deed, I convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, that Dad never actually created the trust. Amanda kept telling me Mom was lying, that there was no trust, that Mom just wanted to keep everything for herself. I believed what I wanted to believe. The judge's verdict was swift. The quitclaim deed was void. The trust was valid. Brittany Thompson remained the legal owner and trustee of the property. The fraud lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, there was evidence of evidence tampering and potential fraud on the court by Amanda Thompson. That's when the prosecutor entered the courtroom. I hadn't even known the district attorney's office was involved, but apparently Patricia had contacted them when we discovered Amanda's box access. The prosecutor formally charged Amanda with evidence tampering, theft of legal documents, and fraud. The bailiffs arrested her right there in the courtroom. I should have felt victorious. I should have been celebrating. But all I felt was tired and sad as I watched them handcuff Amanda while she screamed threats at everyone in sight. Derek sat with his head in his hands, his whole body shaking with sobs. After the hearing, Patricia pulled me aside with news that should have been the final victory. The house is legally yours again. The transfer was void, so you never actually lost ownership. You won. Except I hadn't won. The house was still in terrible condition. The county had placed a lien on the property for code violations totaling $45,000. If I didn't pay within 30 days, they'd seize the house and auction it to recover the debt. All the repair costs were still there, still waiting, still impossible for me to afford. I had the house, but I was about to lose it anyway. Derek approached me as I was leaving the courthouse. Martha positioned herself protectively beside me, but I waved her back. Derek's eyes were red-rimmed, his face blotchy from crying. "Mom, I have some money. Not much, but my business account that Amanda didn't know about. $20,000. It's yours. For the house repairs. Please. Let me do this one thing right." I felt a crack in the ice that had formed around my heart. "Derek, that's your business. You'll have nothing left. I deserve to have nothing. Please, let me help fix what I broke." $20,000 plus my remaining $8,000 was $28,000. I needed $113,000 total for the repairs and the liens. We were still $85,000 short. The house would still be auctioned in 30 days. I looked at my son, this broken man who'd betrayed me, and was now trying to make amends, and I made a decision. "I forgive you, Derek, but you made a mistake. You need to rebuild your life. Focus on your business. I can't take your money." "But the house! Dad built it with his own hands. I watched him put in every board, every nail. I can't let it be destroyed because of what I did." "Derek, sometimes we don't get to keep the things we love. We have them for a while, we cherish them, and then we let them go." Martha grabbed my arm. "Don't give up yet. I have an idea. Trust me." That night, Martha started making phone calls. She contacted people I hadn't spoken to in months, people who'd turned their backs on me during the lawsuit, people who'd believed Amanda's lies. She told them the truth, how I'd been vindicated, how Derek had confessed, how Amanda had been arrested. She told them I was about to lose Thomas's house not because of fraud or confusion, but because I couldn't afford the repairs that 30 years of time had made necessary. And then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, too exhausted for more bad news. But something made me pick up. "Mrs. Thompson? You don't know me, but I knew your husband. My name is George. I owned the hardware store on Main Street 30 years ago." I vaguely remembered Thomas mentioning a hardware store owner he'd helped. "Your husband saved my business. I was about to go bankrupt, couldn't make payroll. Thomas lent me $5,000, refused to let me pay him back. He said, 'Pass it on when you can.' Well, I can now. And I want to help save his house." George pledged $10,000. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. The campaign Martha organized spread like wildfire through the internet. She'd created a crowdfunding page titled, "Help a Widow Save Her Late Husband's Dream," and she posted the entire story, the betrayal, the lawsuit, the vindication, and the looming loss. She included court documents, newspaper articles, and photos of the house Thomas built. People I'd never met started donating. $20, $50, $100. Small amounts that added up slowly but surely. The local newspaper, perhaps feeling guilty about their earlier coverage, ran a follow-up story. Community rallies around wronged mother. That article was picked up by regional news outlets, then by a national website that specialized in feel-good comeback stories. Derek saw the crowdfunding campaign and did something that surprised me. He called the local news station and asked for an interview. I watched it live from Martha's house, my heart in my throat. The reporter asked him point blank, "Why should people help your mother when you're the one who caused this problem?" Derek, looking directly into the camera, said, "They shouldn't help because of me. They should help because my mother is one of the most loving, forgiving people in this town, and she doesn't deserve to lose the home my father built for her. I betrayed her for greed. She's forgiven me even though I don't deserve it. The least I can do is publicly own what I did and try to make it right." He announced he was starting his own fundraising effort. He'd taken construction jobs, day labor work, anything that paid. Every penny would go towards saving the house. His former business partners, men who'd known Thomas, came forward to help. They forgave the debts Derek owed them, freeing up more money. The donations climbed. After 1 week, we had $40,000. After 10 days, $60,000. I spent hours each night reading the messages that came with donations, crying over the kindness of strangers and the loyalty of people I'd forgotten. One woman wrote, "Your husband fixed my car for free when I was broke and pregnant. Here's $200. I never forgot his kindness." A man contributed $500 with the message. "Thomas Thompson taught my son carpentry when he was struggling in school. My son is now a successful contractor because of your husband's patience." Another donor wrote, "I was cheated by my own family. Your story gives me hope. $50 isn't much, but it's all I can spare." Derek worked himself to exhaustion. He'd show up at my apartment at 7 in the evening covered in concrete dust or paint, carrying takeout dinner he'd bought with his tips, and we'd eat together in awkward silence that slowly became less awkward. He'd lost 20 pounds, gained muscle, lost the entitled softness that Amanda had encouraged. "Mom," he said one night, pushing noodles around his plate, "I understand now. What Dad built wasn't just wood and structure. It was love and sacrifice and years of work. I took it for granted. I thought I deserved it just because I was born. I was wrong about everything." "You're learning," I said gently. "That's what your father hoped would happen. That's why he set up the trust the way he did." 3 days before the county deadline, we had $78,000, still $35,000 short. The campaign had plateaued, donations slowing to a trickle. Martha tried everything: social media pushes, local radio interviews, flyers at community centers. But it seemed like we'd reached the limit of people's generosity. I prepared myself to lose the house. At least I'd had the satisfaction of vindication. At least I had my son back, changed and humbled, and finally growing into the man Thomas had hoped he'd become. Maybe that was enough. The night before the deadline, I was sitting in my apartment with Derek and Martha, the three of us sharing a pizza and pretending we weren't all thinking about tomorrow. There was a knock at my door. I opened it to find a courier holding a large envelope. "Brittany Thompson? I need your signature." I signed, confused. The courier left. The envelope was from Henderson Construction Company, the national firm where Thomas had worked for 30 years. Inside was a letter on company letterhead and a check that made my hands shake so badly I almost dropped it. Martha grabbed it from me and read aloud. "Dear Mrs. Thompson, Thomas Thompson worked for us for 30 years. He was the most honest, hard-working man we knew. We followed your situation through the news coverage. Your husband had a life insurance policy through the company that he never cashed out. With interest accumulated over the past 3 years, it's now worth $38,000. It's yours. He'd want you to have it." The check was real. $38,000. Thomas's final gift from beyond the grave, arriving just when I needed it most. Derek buried his face in his hands and wept. Martha was crying too, and so was I. We sat in that little apartment, the three of us holding each other and crying and laughing at the miracle of it. Total funds, $116,000. Enough for the repairs, the liens, and a few thousand left over for me. The house was saved. The next morning, Derek, Martha, and I walked into the county office together. We paid every lien, every fine, every penalty in full. The clerk stamped the papers paid in full and smiled at us, one of the few genuine smiles I'd received from strangers in months. "The house is yours, free and clear, Mrs. Thompson. Congratulations." Derek quit his office job the week after we saved the house. He showed up at my apartment with a toolbox that had belonged to Thomas, tools I'd given him years ago that he'd never used. "Mom, I want to learn construction. Really learn it, the way Dad tried to teach me when I was young and too stupid to pay attention. Will you let me restore the house? I'll do it right this time. We'll do it together." Over the next 3 months, Derek and I renovated that country house together. He learned every skill Thomas had tried to teach him as a boy: how to frame a wall properly, how to lay tile so it lasted, how to install a septic system that would last another 30 years. We worked side by side, and slowly, the house came back to life. The community pitched in too. George from the hardware store donated materials at cost. Men who'd worked with Thomas volunteered weekends to help with the big jobs. Women from my old church group brought lunch and apologized for doubting me. The town that had turned its back on me slowly became my support system again. Amanda took a plea deal: 18 months probation, restitution for the money she'd stolen from Derek, and a permanent restraining order keeping her away from both of us. She left town quietly, divorced Derek by mail, and we heard through the grapevine that she'd moved back in with her ex-husband. Derek never spoke about her except to say, "I don't hate her. I pity her. She never understood what real wealth is." On a sunny Saturday in June, we held a small gathering at the newly restored house. Martha made potato salad. George brought steaks to grill. Derek's former business partners came with their families. The garden was blooming with roses I'd replanted, and the house gleamed with fresh paint and repair. Martha made a speech thanking the community. George talked about Thomas's generosity. Then Derek stood up, looking nervous but determined. "My father built this house with his own hands," he said, looking out at the friends gathered on the lawn. "I nearly destroyed it with my selfishness and greed. My mother saved it with grace and forgiveness. This house isn't just walls and a roof. It's a testament to what we can build when we love each other and forgive each other's mistakes." He looked at me, tears in his eyes. "Mom, I know I can never fully make up for what I did, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life trying. Thank you for not giving up on me." I stood and hugged my son, both of us crying while our friends and neighbors applauded. "Thomas would be proud," I whispered in Derek's ear. "Not of the house, of you, of who you're becoming." 6 months after that gathering, I moved back into the country house permanently. Derek built a small addition onto the back, a studio apartment where he lived while building his new business, Thompson & Son Construction. He was using the skills he'd learned during the restoration, taking on small jobs, and building a reputation for honest work and fair prices. We had dinner together 3 nights a week. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch Thomas built and watch the sun set over the 5 acres, and Derek would tell me about his day, about the customers he'd helped, about the satisfaction of building something with his own hands. He was becoming the man his father had always hoped he'd be, just took a harder road to get there than anyone planned. People often ask me how I forgave Derek so completely, how I didn't hold on to anger or resentment after what he put me through. The truth is simpler than they expect. Hate would have destroyed me, not him. Forgiveness was the only path to peace, for both of us. Thomas taught me that what we build with love can survive anything, even betrayal. This house stood because it was built right, with patience and care and proper foundations. My relationship with Derek survived because forgiveness is stronger than pride, and love is more powerful than hurt. Amanda tried to take our home, but she only succeeded in taking Derek's innocence and illusions. He had to lose everything to understand what really mattered. Sometimes that's the only way people learn. I'm just grateful he learned before it was too late, before the damage was permanent. This house isn't valuable because of its market price or property value. It's valuable because 3 generations have loved here, because Thomas and I built our life here, because Derek finally learned here what it means to work for something, to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. When someone wrongs you, you face a choice. You can let it destroy you, consume you with bitterness and rage, or you can let it refine you, teach you, make you stronger and wiser. I chose refinement. I chose my son over my anger. I chose love over hate, and I got both my home and my family back, better than they were before. Thomas used to say something I didn't fully understand until now. We don't own things. We're stewards of them for a while, taking care of them until it's time to pass them on. He was right. I was a steward of this house, protecting it through crisis, until Derek was ready to help me protect it. Someday, when I'm gone, Derek will be the steward. And he'll be ready, because he learned what it really costs to build something worth keeping. That's the lesson I want to leave with you. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's the strongest choice you can make. And the things we build with love and patience and sacrifice, those are the things that endure. Not because they're perfect, but because they're built on foundations strong enough to survive storms. Now I sit on this porch most evenings, watching the sun paint the sky orange and pink over the property Thomas and I built together. Derek is usually inside working on plans for tomorrow's job. The garden is blooming. The house is solid. My heart is at peace. We almost lost everything, but we saved what really mattered. Not the building, not the land, but the bond between mother and son, the lessons learned through suffering, and the understanding that real wealth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with love. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to forgive someone who deeply betrayed you? How did you find the strength to choose forgiveness over anger? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about the challenges we face and the strength we find to overcome them. Share this with someone who needs to hear that forgiveness is possible, that families can heal, and that homes built on love will always stand. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you peace, healing, and the courage to build something beautiful from even the most broken circumstances.